Hey bookish beauties, my name is Sierra. Welcome to my channel. On this channel, I love to talk about reading and writing. So this video, we're going to talk about if you need an epilogue in your story. So let's go ahead and dive right in. An epilogue is a short section at the end of the story that provides more information on the character, the plot, or maybe the world after the story has concluded. While the final chapter kind of wraps up the story, the epilogue kind of gets a glimpse into certain questions that may not have been answered, or maybe even for a lot of fantasy stories, what could happen next. So kind of like a butterfly effect. What could happen next after this certain situation was resolved, or maybe it wasn't resolved in the way that it was supposed to. Now, what are those consequences of those? Some different types of epilogues are time jumps, character update, and loose ends. So the first one is, are you providing closure or resolution? If you are, then this could be a point where you can take time to really figure out what resolution that your character needs. Like, what have they reached a level of growth throughout the story? But there's still something that maybe the readers are like, okay, well, what about such and such? So for a lot of stories, it could be, from what I have experienced, would be like romance books. Not all romance books have a HEA, which is a happily ever after. So some books, especially I think one specifically by J.L. Seeger, I'm not gonna give it away like the whole story, but in the first story it doesn't end with the HEA, but then it kind of alludes to that there's gonna be a second book because there's gonna be more of what's going on between the characters. I think it was Chris and oh, I forgot the other character's name. Mallory, Chris and Mallory's story. So like the first one doesn't end with the HEA, but the second story you get more information. I don't remember if the second one ends with the HEA or if there was a third one. I can't remember, to be quite honest. There's a lot of books I read, but still, like, kind of that having that resolution, maybe an epilogue there could actually lead up to your actual happily ever after. Then it ends with the happily ever after, but you have to read the epilogue to do that, and everybody reads the epilogue. So I feel like that would be another way that's very crucial for your story. If there's like a certain resolution like that, maybe there's like a big battle, but no one really wins at the end of it. So then the resolution, the epilogue could be like the resolution of that. Like maybe there's war issues going on, maybe another war starts type of thing. If that's kind of like what you're alluding to, is that what you had as the ending, there's still not enough information to really like conclude the story. It can allude to a lot more going on the other side. It could be another way to give a reader a satisfying after feeling. So this could be just like, especially for books that don't end with the HEA necessarily, the epilogue might lead it to end to an HEA, or at least a cultivation of it of some sort. So some romance books I've read where they don't end up like together at the end of the story, but the HEA kind of alludes to like them moving in together, or maybe the main character is pregnant, something like that. It leads to like, okay, maybe there's something that can actually solidify, further down the line in the story. But it gives you a feeling of like, okay, I feel better now. I don't feel like we ended when they had like a big fight or something like that. It feels like, okay, now that they had that big fight, but reading the epilogue, clearly they've moved past it. They have come to terms with what happened, but they're actually able to move forward. So I guess like it gives like a sense of hope too as well when it comes to like that after feeling. At least that's what I think of it as. Another reason to do an epilogue, if there's any foreshadowing for a spin-off or a sequel. So a lot of books do this. All books, especially fantasy books, trust me, I know you guys know fantasy books do this a lot. I don't read that much fantasy, so I can't say all fantasy do it, but I feel like it's a very good understanding that fantasy books do this, with alluding to spin-offs or sequels for future stories. So this could literally just be as such, maybe they win the battle, but then the epilogue is another situation that's going on because of the battle that happened, or maybe something completely different. It could be a little bit of a butterfly effect. I feel like a good story that kind of does this, I haven't read the book yet, but I've seen the movie, which is The School for Good and Evil. I feel like the ending of the movie really ties into the book. I don't know how accurate it is, so I can't say it's completely accurate, but the ending of the movie, you can tell that, oh, there's more to this story. So I don't know if they're going to continue the movies as they did already, as the book's already made anyway. But the scene at the end of it, it really shows that, oh yeah, there's more to gonna happen. Like, these girls didn't just go back home and everything's fine and dandy. Like, there's still some shit going on that no one knows about. So I feel like that movie does a really good ending. Another good reason to do an epilogue is if you're reflecting on a moral theme or like a lesson that you wanted your readers to learn. So I feel like these are really good in probably like literary fiction stories. So if there's a lot of heaviness in the story, especially like if there is relationship dynamics, or maybe a book that has a lot of mental health in it, or even just like a good lesson somewhere in there. Maybe if it is a book that did depict like a toxic relationship, but the epilogue kind of showcases the main character leaving the relationship and actually going to therapy type of thing. I feel like that would be like a good epilogue for a story to show that you can get out of that situation. When you get out, you should seek therapy as soon as possible to help you out to navigate a better life for yourself. Like certain instances like that, I feel like it would be really good to have that in an epilogue when it comes to having those kind of decisions to be made, especially for like the main character or maybe even other characters around them, because, you know, not all main characters last throughout the book. They might die. You never know what kind of book you're reading. So I feel like that kind of ending can really tie into what the whole purpose of the story was, and it wasn't really centered around the character, but more so the topic at hand, or like the moral issue or something like that, you know, kind of switching it up a little bit. Another reason could be doing a subtle farewell to your characters. So maybe you're just not ready to part with them yet. You still want to write a little bit of something, but you don't have enough ideas to do like a complete sequel type of thing. Like you feel like, I don't have that much to say. There aren't any more really drama or any issues going on for a second book to happen. And if you do, you feel like you're like grasping at straws, like just trying to put something together. Like you're literally taking like pieces of paper from like the shredder and you're trying to piece it together and things just don't line up. So don't try to force it. So if you really feel like there's nothing else more to give, like a substance for a real story, just go ahead and put in the epilogue. It could really just be all of them hanging out like at a fair or something like that. For one of my stories, I am thinking of the epilogue to be the last scene right before school starts. I'm not going to give it away, but it's going to be from my mystery thriller book. And it's going to be essentially something that happens as soon as school starts. Like the bell is going to ring immediately as like the last line of my epilogue. So it's going to probably allude maybe to a sequel, or maybe just like it's not done yet type of thing. So I feel like that's another cool way of doing it. Let's go into reasons why you should not do an epilogue. So kind of what I just said, if you really feel like the story is finished, you can't really put anything together all that much to make an epilogue, you feel like everything is very concise, everything's been answered, then you don't need an epilogue. Your story's just done, and that's okay. Not all books need an epilogue. Not all books have an epilogue. If your story's complete, your story's complete. Like bada boom, bang, like that's it. Also, if it undermines the ending. So like if you have a specific ending and then you have an epilogue that gives like gives information for something else or for another character that was never introduced in your book. Now you're like, wait, what? Readers are going to be extremely confused. Like, what was the point of this? Like, who is this person? Because now I don't know if they're valuable for the story at all. Like, did you just throw this together for nothing? Like, this could have been like a short story, like on your own, put in like a writing contest type of thing. You didn't have to put it here. Like, it made no sense type of thing. Here are some tips on when you're writing your epilogue. First, keep it short and keep it purposeful. I'm looking over here because I got my notes there. So make sure it's extremely short. Like, it doesn't have to be like 5 pages for an epilogue. I feel like that's more of like a chapter review. Like, you know, like that's kind of like a sneak peek into a new chapter of a book type of thing. I feel like an epilogue is literally like maybe like a good 1.5 pages. Like, it does not need to be long as hell. You need to stick to what you're trying to convey and leave it at that. Don't do more than that, because then you lead into the second, not the second point. I'm just going to talk as a second point, but the second point would be like over explaining. You don't need all that extra fluff. Like, put that into your notes for your next story if you're going to continue it. I feel like over explaining it is just going to cause more people to scratch their heads and be like, huh? And then they're going to try to correlate it to your story and see like how that applies, which makes them even more confused, which then they're going to be like, how does that connect to this? And that's too much. That's too much. As a reader, I'm telling you right now, that's too much. Nobody got time to be doing all that. Like, just give them the enough information to be intrigued, to be interested, and don't over explain. Like, leave them questioning more. Like, you just want just enough. Like, literally, you want to give them like a corner of a piece of a cookie and let them be like, oh, that was so good, I want more. It's like, next book, wait till the next book. Like, you kind of need to do that. You gotta like try to rein them in a little bit. Another point was to like maintain your tone and style. Don't try to switch it up out of nowhere. Unless if it's a completely different character, I feel like that's the only way I would do it, is if the tone and style is a little bit different, because now you're writing from a different character's perspective. It could be like 30 years later and it's this different character and how they kind of relate to what your story was. I feel like that's a little bit different. I feel like that's kind of necessary to kind of differentiate the stories and differentiate the main characters or how they correlate together. I feel like that's necessary. But if you're just doing it just to do it, then babe, it's not gonna work. Like, you're just gonna confuse readers. You can confuse yourself, because if people ask you, oh wait, what about that character? You're like, what? Yeah, that character in your epilogue. And you're like, oh, I just threw that together. It's like, girl, nobody needed that if you weren't gonna do anything about it. Like, I feel like that's very unnecessary. Also, for the last point, is to tie back to your themes or your symbols. So like anything that really solidifies more to the story, I feel like connect that to your epilogue. So it could literally be like, I don't know, a coin. Like, maybe the main character got this coin from a family member in the main part of your story to help, I don't know, harness magical abilities or something. And then literally in your epilogue, someone finds that coin and they want to know the history of it or the background of it, type of thing. A movie that does this really well, I know this is based off the books, but Fear Street, all three of the movies are so good, but the last one really does give like a good epilogue, but also a really creepy scene. If you haven't seen the movie, I don't want to give the whole thing away, but I'm going to give away at least the epilogue type of scene where it zooms in the space. I'm not going to give it away, but it zooms in on the space and the book is in the middle and you see someone grab it. You don't know who it is. You don't know if it's someone from Shady Side. You don't know if it's someone from the town over, which I forgot the name of the town. You don't know who it could be, because it could literally be anybody. It could be another teenager. It could be one of the adults that's part of this whole situation from the movies, or if you read the books, you know what I'm talking about. Like, there's so many different aspects of who it could be. I feel like that was a really good way to tie back into that, where this book has been the problem since the beginning, and now the fact that it's in someone's hands again, that's a problem. We don't know who it is. We don't know if this person's good or bad. We don't know what their purpose is of finding this book. Like, how did you come down here like the other characters did? Did you follow them the entire time? Like, we don't know. We have no idea what the hell, wow, I'm stuttering. But we don't know how the hell they got this book. I feel like that's a good way to do it. The next section kind of gives some ideas of epilogues, but I feel like I've given some examples anyway throughout this video, so we're gonna skip that. But pretty much just like in conclusion, some final thoughts. When writing an epilogue, you gotta really just kind of like think to yourself, is there a little bit more to the story that you want to convey? If so, go ahead and do it. Just stick to the tips, making sure that it's concise, purposeful, and not doing the absolute most. Like, do just enough to hint your readers at maybe a future story, or even just like kind of like tie it up together nice and neatly, like with a cute little bow where people feel satisfied enough. So it kind of depends on the genre that you're writing. Like, if you're doing like a romance, it's kind of neatly tied up, needing the bow, or a coming of age story where it feels like the character really has come into their own, versus like a mystery, thriller, fantasy, dystopian type of book, all that kind of stuff, where you kind of want to allude to more of like a mystery, maybe there's more going on or whatever. It all depends on what genre you're writing or where you want to go with your story. If you're looking to do a sequel, then yeah, you're gonna need to do a little bit of like breadcrumbing. But yeah, it really all depends on what you're writing and what you're trying to convey. But please be smart with it. I don't want to read epilogues that are like 10 pages long. Give me like 3 pages absolute max. Like, we don't need that many pages for an epilogue. It's not that deep. All right, if you like this video, be sure to like this video. I also have a playlist of other writing tip videos. Put it up here or in the description box below. I'll put it somewhere. So, and until next time, stay magical. Bye.